Favorite time of year because there's never an off season for talking fantasy football. And Bloom, this is the list that we will be
Ah,
going over. I've got a list. You've got a list. Here we go. It's one of our favorite shows of the year. It is time, maybe past time, for snorkel, scuba, and submarine. Brother, I'm fired up.
yeah, this is fun because I think this is something you and I have done for a long time, which is, as you mentioned, and it's the draft, and it's wrapping your mind around free agency and coaching changes. It's looking for the drips and drops of news about what's taking shape, and the draft. And when the NFL season is over, the scouting departments, the coaches, the personnel departments have another season, and there are winners and losers. Maybe we don't learn about the winners and losers for years, but there are winners and losers. And when we think about that, we think about players where the arrow is pointing up. We talk about week 17 a lot with Lee Parker. Players that are showing that their best football is yet to come, and maybe they're about to take that leap. And it's fun to make that list to identify those players, or at least who might be those players.
Well, and also one thing we need to highlight here that maybe people don't know, but we're also competitive. So what is cool about going down this list is like, I want to get all the guys that I like. And then when you get somebody that's not on my list, I'm like, oh, yeah, damn it, I missed that guy. Or I'm going to go back and watch that guy. Or no, I don't agree with that. So it's like a back and forth of our list as I'm rattling the drafting table into my little studio mic here. But that's what's exciting for me is like, I know who's on my list. I even went to the AAF, Bloom.
Oh,
Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there for some of those submarine guys. Just a couple. Nothing too deep. But I can't wait to see who's on your list too.
yeah, and that's we have types. Maybe those types change over time, maybe not. So it is fun to anticipate that and to see where the overlap is and see where we go out on a limb.
Where we go out on a limb, and we're going to start with the quarterback position. And for those of us that are just joining us, well, welcome. Thank you for watching, and thank you for subscribing to the Audible on iTunes. Make sure to hit the bell, hit like, leave a comment, everything you possibly can here on YouTube. But we're going to go through it, and Bloom, we'll cross guys, you know what I mean? So like my quarterback snorkel list, there might be guys that are quarterback snorkels for you, but are scuba guys for me. So vice versa. And before we jump into QBs, just Bloom, let's explain to the listeners why you came up with this. Like, okay, there's the snorkel guys,
right,
there's the scuba guys, and the submarine guys. We're going to talk about them all.
Yeah, and what's fun about this is there's dynasty leagues to cater to all depths. And I love my IDP leagues with 53 roster spots and using those last few roster spots to plant some seeds and see what grows. And with quarterback, so now we have 2 quarterback leagues. And in 2 quarterback leagues, this becomes a much more important segment. I think with a few years ago, before Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues were on the rise, we'd say, well, we don't necessarily recommend carrying developmental quarterbacks, but here are a few. And now this becomes very important in some leagues.
Very, very important as well. Chat room getting fired up. Oh, hi, Luke from Northern California. And chat room, what is up? Let's get to the quarterbacks and let's get to the snorkel list. Just the snorkels, Bloom. And again, some of my guys might cross over with your guys at different levels. But for me, I can't wait to see what happens with Jacoby Brissett. Now, it might take some time, might have to be patient. The Colts might keep him for another year, which is fine. Remember, dynasty format. But for me, Jacoby Brissett leads my snorkel list because that talent is there as a starter. We've seen it before. He's got some athletic ability to pick up yards with his feet as well, which we know has great value in fantasy leagues. So Jacoby Brissett lists top of the list for the snorkels, one of the most exciting young quarterbacks out there. Nick Mullins, I'll throw in as a snorkel. He's probably a little bit deeper than that, Bloom. Again, we've seen him play. We know what's been there with Kyle Shanahan. Will that come back? Jimmy Garoppolo, you can't trust that guy to stay healthy. And then for me, one of the reasons, I've told the story before, but one of the reasons I kept going to the Shrine game, because the talent at the Shrine got a little shaky there for a little bit. I've been going for 14 years in a row now, but I stayed with it instead of going to the NFLPA game in Los Angeles, which I've never been to. I stayed with it because of Nate Sudfeld. When he came out of Indiana a couple of years ago, I was like, okay, here's a big, tall passer, big arm. Want to see this guy. Washington had him. They got a little cute with it. Philadelphia stole him away. And Philadelphia, by the way, going to lose Nick Foles, leading to Nate Sudfeld. Speaking of a guy you can't trust to stay healthy, there's Carson Wentz. Just watching, just monitoring in any dynasty leagues I play in. I'm going out and grabbing a Nate Sudfeld. So those are my three guys. Again, Snorkel, we'll cross a little bit here, Bloom. But let's go over your list of Snorkel QBs.
Sudfeld's a good name and definitely one that you want to echo because of the organization developing quarterbacks, and Washington could obviously use him right now. I'll echo Brissett too. He's going to get a chance to start. And in the interest of being thorough, you should check on Teddy Bridgewater, check on even Tyrod Taylor, because even though Tyrod Taylor might be like the 34th best quarterback in the league, that guy often starts. And when Tyrod Taylor starts, he still has some fantasy value. And the other name I would toss out there and Mullins is another good name to bring up, and because of how he came on later on, see if he gets reunited with Scangarello at some point, maybe not this year, but somewhere down the line now that he's moved up to be the offensive coordinator in Denver. I'll just add Taysom Hill. And I'm intrigued, BC. It's kind of like a sideshow, and the way that the Saints use him, I don't know that he's their quarterback of the future, but things change. They love him athletically. He's a freak. You never know. And just that he's getting on the field and getting a chance to show how he can contribute to a football team is enough for me to say something might happen, something else unexpected, because this was unexpected enough.
Right, and I echo that. Taysom Hill, some great names there, and I just kind of want to see how he develops. Now, what you'll notice, not on my list anyway, and again, we'll cross promote here and cross over guys, but when I go to scuba quarterbacks, I'm not really looking at the Kyle Laulettas and stuff like that. I do have some of those type of names. That's in the submarines mostly for me, but just kind of some interesting backups. Cooper Rush in Dallas. People around that team love that guy. I may not necessarily agree with that. Saw him at the Shrine Game a few years ago. Like, he's okay. I mean, I saw Nick Mullins at the Shrine Game. I was like, he's okay. Well, in the pros, like, what is he today? So I want to continue to watch that at the scuba level. Deshaun Kaiser, Bloom, I know you may get sick when I mention that name, but he had a year with the starting. Now, okay, let's see what Kaiser can do. A Matt LaFleur-led team. Maybe that's a little bit different, more of a little quarterback friendly, what have you. Mason Rudolph with our Steelers, because it's all burning down. Not just New Orleans where you're at right now, Bloom, but the Steelers. Is no Le'Veon Bell tag. Antonio Brown's going to get traded. Who the hell knows with Ben? What's up there? Rudolph, I'll continue to watch that. I might talk about James Washington a little bit later. And then a guy I don't necessarily like his skill set, but I don't know. Big Al locally, Big Alfred Williams here was like, go get Sean Mannion. Go get this guy. And he talked to Eric Dickerson as well at the Super Bowl this year. And even Dickerson was like, yeah, a Mannion guy, if he gets an opportunity. So again, size, toolsy, arm. I still don't like it. Didn't like him at the Senior Bowl, but scuba, guys to monitor. Those are my 4 scuba QBs.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I think that unlike some of the other positions, there's not a lot of oxygen in the water. We need the scuba mask at quarterback. And really, a lot of the names you just mentioned are more submarine for me, just because I feel like they're long shots. A guy like Mason Rudolph. What I mean by a long shot is a long shot to hit and hold at the quarterback position in a way that matters in fantasy football, even in 2 quarterback leagues. So Deshaun Kaiser, that's a good name, though, because that second organization, and I'm certainly fascinated. Hey, Matt LaFleur has done good things with quarterbacks in the past. Cooper Rush, you mentioned Mike White even. I liked Mike White out of that 3rd tier of quarterbacks last year. These are guys that I had as submarine. And, I'm looking at this as strictly from a fantasy football standpoint. Okay, so this is a little bit of a curveball. But the only guy I have really in this tier is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And only because he was a top 3, top 5 fantasy quarterback for a brief moment, and he looked functional in the type of offense that more teams might be trying to install. So I believe that if Ryan Fitzpatrick gets another shot as a bridge quarterback, he'll be a good asset to have, or at least could be a good asset to have. And I would look forward to another chapter in Fitzmagic Chronicles.
Even if it's just a game or two. Remember our conversation from the regular season is it's about windows. Fitzpatrick's going to get you a window. He's not going to get you much after that, but you're going to have a little cluster of 2, 3, 4 games.
Yeah,
where it's going to be really good to have him on your roster. So I agree with that. Now, submarine is where those guys I mentioned previously will be on your list. But for me, there is Mike White. I did bring him up there. I've got Ryan Griffin. I think Ryan Griffin will always be a submarine quarterback for me. Probably nothing ever. But for me, still want to see that talent as a passer there with Bruce Arians now, Buccaneers. Jeff Driscoll, even though we saw him start a little bit, okay, submarine for me. Kyle Sloter. They're going to move on from Trevor Siemian. So Kyle Sloter's there's number 2 behind Kirk Cousins. Watch out for that guy. Athletic and a big arm. Speaking of athletic and a big arm, I know I'm going to take a lot of shut your mouth for this. And sorry, Joe. I threw Paxton Lynch on here. I don't know. Maybe I was playing too much Madden. I have no idea. But when you have, I've seen the talent. See, that's the problem. We get to this, and in this show, we've talked about the Cody Latimers or whatever for years. Not this year, by the way, Cody. Sorry, but like I've seen this talent. I've also seen him on Xbox for 100 hours in the month of November. During regular season when he's starting. Like, so okay, the physical talent there, whatever. Probably nothing ever. Alex Magoo, Brogan Roback, just the name Brogan. With our beloved Steelers want to see there. And my one AF guy from the quarterback position so far is Luis Perez, the kid that learned how to play quarterback on YouTube. Texas A&M Commerce, right, Bloom? And has been slinging it in the AF, which, yes, I've been watching.
Yeah, the AAF. That's good, Cecil. Hopefully that helps them make payroll. It's tough out there at quarterback. Look, again, like the Deshaun Kaiser story, Brett Hundley, another organization, and to realize dynasty value from these players takes a lot of patience. So there's only a certain kind of league where these players matter. But Brett Hundley, athletic, and you might at least say it's possible that the way he was handled in Green Bay wasn't great for his development. Tim Boyle's interesting in Green Bay. Speaking of Green Bay too, one of those players that makes the roster a bit of a long shot, but one of the third quarterbacks to monitor. I like you mentioned Sloter, and I think one of the reasons to mention Sloter is that even though this is where this gets awkward, right? Cease 3 years, $84 million guaranteed. We don't have faith in you, Kirk Cousins. Is that? I mean, there's greater than 0% chance at some point we cross that bridge. There's Kyle Sloter. So that name is a really interesting one for me. But hey, this is where we really turn the page and say, what about this year's quarterback class now?
Sorry, and never mind. Running back position we go, and our snorkel running backs, again, we're going to cross over some things. But for me, I've got a list of a few here. Chase Edmonds in Arizona. One I really, really like from this list. I mean, really like Ito Smith from Atlanta. I remember how much I talked about Eli McGuire last year. Like, don't forget Eli McGuire. He's going to come off IR. Eli McGuire, who you might have an elevated role, with them moving on with the Jets. But Ito Smith was a guy that I compared to Eli McGuire. So there for the Falcons now, with, of course, Tevin Coleman likely to move on, maybe to Denver in free agency. Kalen Ballage, my man Eric Studesville, cheesing. He came out and said, I really like Kalen Ballage. So that was a news item yesterday on our footballguys.com newswire. So Kalen Ballage in this. Jalen Samuels is on this list. Mark Walton, although I think there's more trouble brewing for Mark Walton, Bloom. Let me know what you hear there. Wayne Gallman, I'll keep an eye on him there with the Giants. Certainly the Paul Perkins experiment did not work out. So Gallman there behind Saquon Barkley. And good old Capri Bibbs. Can't rap, but it turned out a pretty nice little receiving back there now with the Packers. So those are my snorkel running backs. How about you?
Yeah, we're going to a lot of names here. And we know every year with running back position that depth charts can be fluid. We know that situation creates a lot of value at running back. So look, large differences in talent can still boil down to small differences in production when it's a good offense. So these names are important to know, and I'm going to cast a wide net, and we will touch on some of the same names. John Kelly, he's good. There's going to be a time that we're watching John Kelly be good on an NFL football field. It might. And
are they going to bring C.J. Anderson back after him running his mouth on Fox Sports, talking about Todd Gurley? Dude, that's not. Listen, I love C.J., but that's not what you want to do.
Yeah, that's what I would do. That's why I wouldn't last very long in that kind of position.
Pretty sure Todd Gurley was hurt Worse than we thought. What?
Yeah, and they never let
Wasn't
on.
on the injury report. Okay.
Right, that's a problem. And Malcolm Brown, for that matter, Malcolm Brown's still good. Rod Smith, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent, a good all-around back, play some fullback. He can. He's out. Every team should want to have a running back like Rod Smith, even if it's their third running back, because he can fill in doing just about anything. It's a competent back, and remember, he had a short stint 2 years ago during the suspension and broke some big plays. Chris Warren, oh yeah, and maybe Oakland takes Josh Jacobs or whoever. Pretty good running back class. The last 2 years had a spoiled. Still a good class. Oakland's going to dip in there. So Chris Warren's not going to be the top returning back, but he just ran over people in the preseason, and they still have him in the organization. You have to love that. Corey Grant. Some team is going to make Corey Grant more than Jacksonville did. Isn't it easy? Isn't it easy to believe any sentence that ends with more than Jacksonville did on offense?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, Corey Grant, someone's going to use in the passing game. Jordan Wilkins, a Matt Waldman special. And Wilkins looked good to me in the short time he got. Now, Marlon Mack had some explosive plays. I think that could still sort itself out. But Wilkins belongs on the NFL field. He showed me that. I'm not moving on completely from Alex Collins. It was bad last year. He didn't fit in the running game and got hurt, or maybe it was worse than. Maybe
watch for the Eagles there, by the way. Speaking of going to a good offense, watch for the Eagles and Alex Collins.
What we saw 2 years ago from Alex Collins, that wouldn't just vanish. And Kenneth Dixon, for that matter, when Kenneth Dixon looked good, and especially in this running game, any running back on the Ravens roster. Kalen Ballage, you mentioned, he had that big play at the end of the year, but still a work in progress. Elijah McGuire, just by default, although Bell to the Jets could be fun there. Dante Foreman, and this is one where, hey, look, if the Texans are still using a roster spot on him, then they see the chance for him to get back to where he was. And this is still a plum situation as far as, young running back landing in the Texans offense, we think could have a reign of a few years there. That could still be Foreman. And it's easy to forget that Jeremy Hill was getting some buzz before he went down with that torn ACL. And he was in line to get touches for the Patriots offense. And there's an alternate universe where we were talking about Jeremy Hill having, 200 carries for 900, 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns this year as the power runner for this team. And Sony Michel, doesn't, because Hill a few years ago, even though he wasn't as good as his numbers for fantasy, was still a very useful running back who seemed to lose his nerve after that playoff fumble. So I'll be watching to hear how he's doing.
Definitely watching there, and I should add Jordan Wilkins on this list. That's a great addition in addition to the other names that you have. My scuba level running backs. Wyoming Cowboys, baby. I was going to talk about Brian Hill. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Hill back with the Falcons. He spent a little time with the Bengals, right, Bloom? Is that right?
Yeah.
But picked up by the Falcons out of Wyoming, now back in Atlanta. And again, okay, you're going to have Tevin Coleman move on. Well, there's Ito Smith, and there's Brian Hill. You just talk about a good, versatile, all-purpose back. Can do everything. Not spectacular at one thing, not overly fast or overly powerful or overly quick, but just really good at everything you want a running back to do. So there's Brian Hill. Speaking of exceptional speed, Trenton Cannon with the Jets, a little Virginia State love. I'll be watching him. Of course, the Jets will be adding running back talent. Maybe it is Le'Veon Bell. Darrell Williams with Kansas City. You mentioned Chris Warren. I was thinking about Chris Warren on this list, but I have Darrell Williams here backing up about second or third string with Kansas City. And yes, I do have a type, Bloom. I do. And I probably shouldn't have him on here, and he probably should be a submarine and maybe not even on the list at all, but Samaje Perine, I'll still watch him because Darius Guice, we don't know about his knee. He had like 3 setbacks. He's not even running at full speed yet. I think he is running though, right? Didn't he put out some videos? But anyway, there in Washington, even though he's been a bust and hasn't looked really good, and certainly not like he did at Oklahoma, I'll still watch a big power back like Samaje Perine.
Yeah. Then anytime, look, this is just like Dynasty 101. Anytime there's a player still in that rookie contract span where they can still grow as a player or get it in a second organization, the career near-death experience, it feels like it's a long time since I've said that. That used to be an Audible drinking game type term. So you always are watching for those players. Brian Hill is a good one. And I would add to that picture that Tevin Coleman is going to be out this year. probably in free agency. Devontae Freeman, it's only a matter of time before he's not a Falcon. And Ito Smith looked okay, functional, but there's an opportunity there. He'll look good at the end of the year. Jacksonville's interesting to me with all this Fournette stuff. So, David Williams, they gave a short audition. Thomas Rawls, I believe they signed him to and Rawls isn't past his prime yet. I mean, that injury may have robbed him of something that he's not going to get back. You mentioned Walton. You mentioned Gallman. And Gallman looks like a solid NFL running back, kind of like Rod Smith in that sense of he's a useful running back to have at the end of your roster as a third or fourth running back if you have to go to him in a pinch. He's a versatile running back. He's a running back who gives everything on all of his reps. And if he wasn't behind Saquon Barkley, he'd be an interesting player to track for dynasty leagues. Maybe in a few years, 2 years down the line, we're talking about him. Darrell Williams, I'll add. This is about where I have Chase Edmonds. Although Edmonds, as a talent, I think you're right to put him in the scuba in the snorkel tier there. It'll be interesting to see if Arizona's offense can turn around. That's what's not as exciting to me about stashing Edmonds, is that when is Arizona's offense going to be an offense that, look what they did to David Johnson last year. Brutal. And I'll add Amir Abdullah. And so types, this is kind of the counterpart.
I knew you would.
Yeah, right? This is the counterpart, right? Like you say P. Ryan, I say Abdullah. I still think that the Lions never used him to his talents, to maximize his talents. I'd love to see him in some place like New England. I'll be interested to see. And this is one of the fun things about the offseason too. See, we don't talk about this as just from an enjoyment standpoint of following football. When a player like Abdullah hits free agency, it's fun to simulate, well, what team will give him a chance? What team, we saw Minnesota take a look at him. Will they go back to the well? Do they see something potentially more there? He certainly fits in the type of running back they've been rostering. Or is it another team? Is it a coach that's been coveting him, or a personnel guy that's been coveting him since he was in the draft, and now they've just quietly been waiting their chance? So I'm interested to see where he lands.
Going to the submarine running backs here, you did mention David Williams, who was a 7th-round draft pick over the Broncos. And I remember talking to David because he has really light feet. For a big man, first when he was drafted, and I remember I was on the air in Dallas, and of course they go to me like, who's David Williams? I'm like, he's like my 65th running back this year. But when I saw him up close, I was like, okay, I can see what made Denver a little bit interested. Really light feet. I asked him about his light feet. Like, where'd you get the light feet from? It's unusual for a big man. He said his mother was a dancer. And I was like, you got some dance moves? He's like, hell no. But he's got those light feet. So David Williams on the submarine list for me. Jerry McNichols, who spent a couple of weeks with the Broncos. He's with the Titans now. By the way, by the time you're watching this or listening to this, some of these guys may be cut or on a different team. But whatever. Coolest name ever, Rock Thomas from the Minnesota Vikings. I'll throw him in there. Daniel Laskow, soft spot for him. With the Saints, including the wrecking Null, Ryan Null with the Chicago Bears. Just want to see him continue there. And one AAF back, Bloom, a back that we all know, a back that we used to talk about, Zach Stacy. Zach Stacy's looking really good. Yeah. Now, it was the major ankle injury that knocked him out with the Jets, but Zach Stacy is looking really good in the AAF, which, again, if you guys aren't watching, first off, you're watching this show, you're probably watching the AAF, but there's some players that shown they belong. Like, I would take Zach Stacy over Devontae Booker right now.
Sure. Well, what was it, Cease? 4th and Long, Andrew Hawkins, right? That show. AF is kind of a reality show, and absolutely the NFL can get some ideas, some renewed interest in players. Zach Stacy fits there. He did what he did in the SEC. We know around draft time, we remember what that means potentially for a player's future. And this is a great position to go deep. Cease, we bring up some of the same names. We get a chance to talk about players we liked in the draft evaluation process, and we get to check in. It's a good excuse to check in on these transactions under the radar, these futures contracts, and players can definitely come from very humble places like that, or tryouts. The Saints are interesting with Mark Ingram potentially moving on. They've got Daniel Laskow, the spark freak. Boston Scott got re-signed there, a Waldman favorite, more of a Darren Sproles type. You mentioned Rock Thomas. Mike Boone has looked good too. Look, both Thomas and Boone looked really good in the preseason. Really explosive. And again, the Vikings have this type with Cook where that slasher, the bursty back, it really, I think, I'm excited about both of these guys. It might take them getting into another organization. You mentioned Trenton Cannon. And let me ask you this one, Cease. D'Angelo Henderson, what do you think?
I don't mind his shiftiness. He's not a bursty back. I think we need to start to make that a thing, Bloom, like bursty back.
Yeah.
I do like his elusiveness. I don't think he's not a pile pusher, never, but I think he kind of runs blind inside a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me.
Yeah, so just the Jets again as an organization with potential for opportunity, however, also potential for Le'Veon Bell. Vanderbilt, you mentioned Vanderbilt backs. This is how we do it. See, Zach Stacy isn't the only Vanderbilt back we'll discuss in this segment. Ralph Webb, the Steelers had got him
very good
on their roster, and he's again SEC production, a hard nosed, smart back. I was happy to see the Steelers land him. Buddy Howell, a player that the Dolphins tried to stash and the Texans took, and we talk about this a lot when a team will use a roster spot on a player all year that they don't really get much out of. It makes you think, well, they see the potential for growth there. A bigger back, Jonathan Williams. And see, sometimes when we do snorkel, scuba, submarine, it's really about, well, this might be one of the last times we get to mention this guy who we once thought was going to be good.
It's like a greatest hits, right? He's always on. Every year you pick up the new greatest hits. Like, oh, yeah. Jonathan Williams again.
Right. And, you covered him with the Broncos for a little bit. He's with the Saints for a little bit. That was exciting last offseason. And now the Colts have him, and the Colts backfield. Well, it's a good offense. Jeremy McNichols, we still have on Tennessee's roster. Detrez Newsome on the Chargers roster. They kept him over Justin Jackson at one point, and he's still on the roster. So, they like him. Donnell Pumphrey, I'm not going to give up on Pumphrey yet. Not yet. Well, not until the NFL completely gives up on him. The Wrecking Null in Chicago, I'm not sure that he might not be as effective or close to effective enough as Jordan Howard, as a power runner for that matter. And I don't want to give up yet on Elijah Hood, Cease, bigger back, Carolina. I know that they don't need running backs in Carolina, so maybe someone else will realize that Hood can play and he'll end up. Before Chris Warren, I liked him in Oakland.
Well, Hood can play. So can TJ Logan, who I don't think we brought up. Bloom, his backfield mate with the Tar Heels. Yeah. And they had a little thunder and lightning there. So excellent. See, I love this little tit for tat.
Yeah.
I just love saying tit for tat because I don't have to say sorry, Joe, when I say that. No. Anyway, I do love the fact that we have this little back and forth because those are some great names. It get me really excited about dynasty formats. So wide receivers. To the wide receiver position we go. It's actually kind of light. When I went over this list, I'm like jamming running backs in, right? I'm just trying to make extra space for running backs. My wide receiver position's pretty light. Snorkel for me, this is just snorkel, but it's the 3 Green Bay 2018 rookies. Okay. And that's it. That's all I have for snorkels. Now I know you're going to have a bunch more, but for me, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Equinemius St. Brown, and Jamon Moore, all 3 of those guys, very significant. We're expecting a boost to the offense from Matt LaFleur and company and Aaron Rodgers working together and all that. Randall Cobb moving on. They got Devontae Adams. Awesome. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Equinemius St. Brown, and Jamon Moore, all 3 larger receivers, but receivers that I was excited about in the pre-draft process. And then they all go to Green Bay within a round or 2. Is that right, Bloom? So for me, snorkel, I know it's light. I know you're going to come up with names. I'm like, damn it, I should have had that guy on there. But for me, I just wanted to highlight those 3 Packers rookies from 2018.
And I'm going to have a long list here also, just because of the nature of the wide receiver position. However, let me say that running back is a much easier position for a long shot to hit, just because of the production, because of the injury attrition. And sometimes it is for that small window that Cease talks about, but it's still indeed, there'll be a time we talk about a player at the end of a season for 3 or 4 weeks when they have to go to him. With wide receiver, this is more prospecting, where we're sifting for gold. They do that in Wyoming.
You got your pants rolled up. You got your pants rolled up, Bloom, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to have been a prospector. That would have been I think I could have.
We can go actually do that at rivers here in Colorado where it's legal and you get to keep the gold. So we can go panning for gold.
I like.
Come on up to Colorado, Bloom.
New idea is like the Audible road trip or the Audible outing. Who wants to go prospecting with us? And then we'll camp like we're old prospectors. And who knows who's the best camp cook out of everybody here? Let's go meet everybody. Okay, snorkel. Deion Kane. He was on his way. Maybe he would have been the number 2 receiver for the Colts this year if he hadn't tore his ACL. I love Richie James. Oh, Richie James. Cease every week. I would go back through my dynasty rosters and I would make trade offers for Richie James anywhere where I didn't get him in the rookie draft, which was most places. I'd love what he showed at the end of the year. I love Wes Welker. Isn't he working for the 49ers now? Yeah. I love it. I love it. Chris Conley, Demarcus Robinson. Chris Conley, free agent, athletic freak. Is he going to get it all back after the Achilles? He didn't look as good or explosive to me as Demarcus Robinson, who will still be there in a good offense. And Demarcus Robinson, remember, was a player that, talking about like Preston Williams this year, where his draft slot didn't reflect his potential as a player because of the character question discount. Andy Reid, John Dorsey, and so on. Justin Watson, a player, if Deshaun Jackson talks his way out of Tampa, this is still going to be, I think, a very productive offense. Adam Humphries could be gone too. Cameron Brate, maybe even as a trade player or cap cut, who knows? Justin Watson was a prospect at this time last year. A lot of people were pounding the table floor. And a combine snub, biggest combine snub, Penny Hart this year. You mentioned the Green Bay receivers, and I'll add, Cease, here we go with the back and forth. Anything you can do. Jay Kumaro, come on.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I was drinking. I don't know. I put together the list and it was light. You came up with some great names, man. Off the top rope, Sigmund Bloom.
Yeah, right. Superfly Snuka. Jake Kumaro, remember, Aaron Rodgers likes him. He was productive. It's going to be really interesting to see how these big receivers turn out, including Kumaro, who's got size. Tim Patrick, now with this Emmanuel Sanders stuff. Watching him back at Utah, the question was never, will he translate in terms of athletic ability and his tools? It was just, can he stay healthy? And he is. And there were moments where you'd see a receiver make a play and you say, that's Cortland Sutton, because that's the kind of player you drafted Cortland Sutton to make. And it was Tim Patrick making the play. There were moments last year, and he's going to have an opportunity. Cordero Patterson, who I just feel like I have to mention because he finally got to play running back and went pretty well. He's going to be a free agent. He's still in his prime. Rashard Higgins, a free agent. I think he's been growing every year. He got hurt in the middle of the year to slow down his momentum, but anybody's going to be playing with Baker Mayfield now. Keith Kirkwood, even Austin Carr, who's developing there with the Saints offense. Traquan Smith is an obvious enough player that he's not on the list, but don't forget about them. And then Marcel Aitman, who got some opportunity at the end of the year, big jump ball receiver. And I think the way those receivers fell and really didn't prove the league wrong. We'll see. I'll mention Auden Tate a little bit later. The big receivers, because there's more. Of course, I'm thinking draft like JJ Arcega-Whiteside. And how are these big contested catch receivers going to do this year when it seems like the league didn't care for them last year? Aitman was one of those guys.
I got a big-bodied receiver for you in Submarine that I know you're going to be like, he's either on your list, or if he's not on your list, you're going to be like, damn it, should have had him on my list. Scuba wide receivers for me. Again, a little bit smaller. Submarine's fuller for me. Cody Core, don't forget him. I'll throw in Mac Hollins. Don't forget about him with the Eagles. Timmy Pats, you mentioned. Tim Patrick with the Broncos. And, yeah, they're going to have a young wide receiver core, but it could be one where Tim Patrick is the number 2. Opposite of Cortland Sutton. Deshaun Hamilton's more of a 3, and Tim has this NFL shield on his arm, and he's a lengthy guy anyway, so the shield's all like stretched out, like huge NFL shield tattooed on his arm. And I asked him last year, I was like, why, that was your first tattoo, like why the shield? Why the NFL shield? Because he says it's the NFL or nothing. So sorry, AAF, you're not getting Tim Patrick. Is a scuba receiver for me. Submarine a little bit deeper, Bloom, but I want to hear your scubas.
Yeah. Another thing I feel like I should mention right now is that when I'm tiering them into snorkel and scuba and submarine, there's always an element of the depth chart and the quality of the situation, not strictly how much I like or at one time was fascinated by a player. So you see a lot of variety where, Javon Wims, for instance, is a guy that I like as much as I like any name other than Richie James that we're going to talk about in this segment. But he's in Chicago. They've just restocked wide receiver. And I just don't know when his opportunity is coming. But I feel good about him as a player who's going to continue to grow. And then on the other end, you just talk about situation like Kansas City, Byron Pringle. who was a player, and I feel like I should mention Cedric Wilson in the same breath, basically, because they looked like similar talents to me in the draft last year. Hey, Byron Pringle can translate enough to be a deep threat for Patrick Mahomes, and Dieter's a player that they liked and brought up at the end of the year. So if Kansas City, if Kansas City sees it worthy to roster a wide receiver, then I see it worthy to roster that receiver in dynasty leagues. Jordan Lasley and Jaleel Scott, and they spent picks on these guys. I think Scott ended up on IR. Lasley was a healthy scratch. Lasley can make those plays down the field. Scott is another big receiver who at least I think went in the 4th or 5th round last year, but we'll see about Lamar Jackson in the passing game there. But let's not forget about these guys with Michael Crabtree potentially a cap cut, John Brown a free agent. I'm going to cheer for whoever signs John Brown. I can't wait for that.
Denver.
Well,
no, Tampa will. Tampa will.
I would love to see that. I would love to see him back with Arians. Auden Tate. And this one's going to be interesting because I still liked Tate a lot more than the league last year. He is slow, but has that big frame and a contested catch specialist again with that theme. But Marvin Lewis, it felt like Marvin Lewis was messing with him, or just he wasn't on Marvin Lewis's right side. And maybe a coaching change there could help him. And I'll just mention Darius Fountain, who did finally get up. They lauded his work on the practice squad. They actually drafted him ahead of Deion Kane. It's the Colts passing game. I liked what I saw from him at Northern Iowa. So I'm not ready to close that's another theme in this show, Cecil. We're not ready to close the book on them yet.
Right. And Darius Fountain last year at the Shrine game was outstanding. By the way, combine snub alongside Philip Lindsay, who was at the Shrine game last year as well. So I love putting Darius Fountain on there. What an oversight. Oh, I feel so ashamed. Submarine, though, I got some for you. A couple of AAF guys, by the way. But I want to remind everybody that Trey Griffey's still kicking around in the league with the Steelers. Sharon Peak. Give me a Clemson guy with the Jets. We'll see what happens there. Tanner Gentry just because of Wyoming. And with the Bears. Braxton Berrios. Okay. Patriots. Super quick, super fast. Miami receiver with the Patriots now. There's Jaleel Scott, who you mentioned. Chad Hansen, who's actually with the Broncos. Like, what was he, like a 3rd round pick out of Cal? Something like that. So he's with the Broncos on their futures contract. Braxton Miller. Okay, that athleticism. Yeah. I mean, this is submarine, right? I'm just watching. And if I have Charles X. Johnson from the AAF, tearing it up. And Rashad Ross from the AAF as well. Those are some of my submarine guys. Bloom, how about you?
Yeah, Rashad Ross made some noise here and there with Washington, I think. And then now it's fun to, all bets are off. Keon Hatcher, who Oakland has been keeping around. 2 with the Chargers seats, a double dip of Chargers submarine receivers. Artavis Scott, there's my Clemson guy. Huh?
Love it. Love it.
I see your Sharon Peak, and I raise you Artavis Scott, who's more of a, running back / wide receiver type, or someone you're going to use closer to the line of scrimmage. And Dylan Cantrell, lest we forget one Dylan Cantrell, who was garnering a lot of buzz, got hurt, great blocking wide receiver, one of those receivers that is big but quick, and at least tested very quick. So Tyrell Williams is going to be gone. Travis Benjamin eventually is going to be a cap cut, or it's not worth what they're paying him. I'm interested there. Brashad Perryman came back to do some stuff, free agent. We're down in submarine, okay? Speaking of down, that's Washington's offense. But Trey Quinn, who, look, there's going to probably be, this is not going to be an expired. See, doesn't Trey Quinn strike you as the kind of guy that Colt McCoy would target a lot,
Right. Right.
And Simi Cobbs, who's another one of these big receivers who had some success in college. The NFL didn't love. He's with Washington now. Vincent Smith, Will Fuller's going to be back. Kiki Cutie's going to be back. You see how there's opportunity there after those players on the outside. Smith spent most of the year on the roster, and I still like Jester Weah there. Jester Weah made some big plays for Pitt. Definitely has NFL tools. Down in Miami, where their offense maybe could be worse than Washington's. Okay, but Isaiah Ford, Waldman special, still hanging around there. Leonte Carew. He gave up a lot for him, still around. Devontae Parker probably gone this year. I hope so. And again, I'm interested to see who's going to have interest in Parker. What organization is going to see that there's something there? Damon Patterson, And this is going to be one the Steelers like it away, Cease. So is it easier to list the Patriots receivers that are under contract next year than the ones who are leaving in free agency? I mean, basically they've got, well, Josh Gordon's a restricted free agent, but he's a big question mark. They've got Julian Edelman. That's it. I mean, Dorsett's a free agent. Hogan's a free agent. Patterson, already mentioned, is a free agent. This is the other Patterson. He had a great summer with the Steelers. Brandon Powell, remember after Golden Tate left, they said, well, Tate was grooming Powell. That's a player to watch, undrafted free agent. So that absolutely, and not quite ready to close the book yet on Chad Williams, who, one time it was thought that Carl's organization saw big things in him, but now we don't see any big things in the Cardinals offense. Anyway.
What's next? Carlton Agudasi?
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
That's a football joke, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, the one thing we have not yet brought up on this program with tight ends left to go on Snorkel, Scuba, Submarine, Bloom is the development of these teams, because we were talking about, of course, the Steelers and what they do at the wide receiver position, which has been significant for years. Not Lima Sweet or Trey Edwards, but that was years ago. But in recent history, certainly. Now, years ago, the Packers, because when we were talking about Kaiser, and it got me thinking about, well, oh my God, it was Hasselbeck and Aaron Brooks and Mark Brunell. Kurt Warner was in their camp for like a cup of coffee. So it's also something interesting to note, like, who are the teams we trust their eye for the position? And when we're talking wide receivers, we're talking Steelers, I trust. That's why I had Trey Griffey on my submarine. It's like, okay, I trust that eye. Not only what I saw from Griffey's Shrine Game, I think. It's also what they see. Do I trust what that team sees, what they can do? Braxton Berrios with the Patriots, right? And with Patterson, Bloom, same thing. It's, do we trust the team in evaluating this position?
Yeah, I think that's a great element. And like you said, you can even start to say developing a certain position, developing even a certain type of player at the position, but then we're always adjusting for coaching changes, and we're always adjusting for the idea that these new bloodlines can start. So that's fun. And tight end is always my favorite position out of all to do for this list, because there's such a wide variety of players, and it's a position now. I think the NFL is becoming more open to using 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets. Look, the name of the game now is to put a personnel set on the field so that when you get a load of what the defense has loaded up for you, you can put them at a disadvantage, whether with a matchup or with the way that it's a light set against something like a heavy run, et cetera, et cetera. And tight ends are players that you can shift before the snap to completely change the look. If you have somebody who can block, like CJ Hawkinson's going to be so fantastic because he can block and he can run routes to every level of the field. So I think offenses are more open to using these players, and I want to see more of them.
My first mock draft comes out on Monday, and Hawkinson is a top 10 pick.
Yeah, as he should be.
Mm-hmm. Detroit, are you listening? Probably not. Anyway, Snorkel tight ends, Bloom, he shouldn't be on this list. Like, it's too obvious. It's too good. It's too much. I'm just going to throw in Hayden Hurst. Cuss me out if you want, but it's a Snorkel tight end. I know Mark Andrews there as well, but Hurst with that significant talent. We'll see what happens there with Lamar Jackson. Run of the show. Remember out Troy Fumagalli in Denver, this West Coast system. You've got Rich Scangarello running the offense. He's worked with George Kittle. So Fumagalli, not that, certainly, on that all-purpose level, but a good receiving threat. I don't think Jake Butt with 3 shredded knees is going to amount to anything in the NFL, unfortunately. And God forbid they bring Jeff Harmon back. But anyway, Fumagalli there as well. Why the hell did I write down Logan Thomas? Okay. By the way, were you surprised that Charles Clay got picked up like that? I mean, like that. Yeah. I mean, 4 days. It was 4 days, and then Arizona's like, we'll take him. Arizona's signing every free agent that's available in mid-February. Anyway, those are my Snorkel guys. A little bit lighter. We get a little thicker later on.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind at tight end is the development curve is more shallow at the beginning, and sometimes it takes 3-4 years. It's kind of like defensive end. Sometimes it takes players longer to really find their game. Remember, tight ends are offensive linemen and receivers. So let's be patient with some of these draft picks. Adam Shaheen, for instance. Gerald Everett. second-round picks. And Everett is strictly a receiving tight end as far as his main value to the team. Higbee is 1 year away from free agency. And NFL GMs out there, the Rams certainly seem to be open to playing it like fantasy football. So will he be getting a big enough contract that he would get a 4th-round comp pick? I don't know, but I would be interested in dangling a pick to get Higbee, who looks like he could still be a very good two-way tight end. Dan Arnold, who we saw, a big wide receiver, really. It's the Saints, just that alone. Somebody who goes and catches Drew Brees passes at a position where the Saints don't have somebody right now. The Texans think they might have someone in Jordan Thomas. Thomas was great in the red zone. There's also still Jordan Akins, more of the downfield threat. It's Sean Watson. See, when we get to this level, sometimes it's just as simple as he still could get better and he plays with a good quarterback. That's enough for me to see what's going to happen with him. And Jacob Hollister and Steven Anderson, speaking of former Texans tight ends, the Texans, I think the Patriots brought Anderson up at the end of the year or in the playoffs, right? Didn't use him. Hollister,
because Hollister was hurt.
Right. And Hollister, another pure receiving tight end, Wyoming Cowboys, baby, right?
Yeah.
One of Josh Allen's favorite targets. Could he be one of Tom Brady's favorite targets if Rob Gronkowski retires this more and next in the next episode?
I'm glad you mentioned Jordan Thomas there, because when he was at the Shrine game last year, it was like they still listed him as a wide receiver.
Right.
And there are those games. Yeah, and it was like 280. And so he started playing tight end, and, well, he made some plays for the Texans this year. That's a great ad there as well. 2 tight ends that I love in my scuba section. Just 2, but I love Michael Roberts from Detroit. Now they get TJ Hawkinson, like in my mock draft, Bloom. Mm-hmm. Then, okay, sorry, Michael Roberts. But when you play, what is it with me in Toledo? But significant red zone threat. I think it was 19 touchdowns in 2 years, top of my head, for Michael Roberts, like significant nose for the end zone. So that's something to keep an eye on. It would be nice if they use that. Be nice if Eric Salbert wasn't behind Austin Hooper and from Tiny Drake College. And I learned today, Bloom, because I said on the air, I said, is there any pick for the Broncos that would surprise you at 10? Like maybe running back, because it's not a great class and they have Phillip Lindsay, whatever. But like I was making the case for TJ Hawkinson at 10. And I said, okay, their new tight ends coach, which came from Atlanta, was at Drake College where Eric Salbert was. And they picked him up when he was with the Falcons. And he just came to the Broncos. He's from Iowa. I'm like, oh, well, it's too easy. Too easy. You need a tight end. Hawkinson's there. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Eric Salbert, to me, again, going back to Shrine game, like that first play where he almost ran me over, I was like, how do you make that catch? And, oh, yeah, I better watch out. So Salbert has that athleticism, can find an open spot, does have burst out of his breaks. I'm interested to see him. I have him in most dynasty leagues. The ones that I don't, I'm trying to get him in. So that's my 2 scuba guys.
Salbert's a good one. That's one. Oh, how did I miss Salbert? Austin Hooper. Salbert offers more upside, at least. Upside in Jason Kroom, who's a converted wide receiver, is making some plays. There's the Josh Allen limiting factor there. But converted wide receiver and Charles Clay gone. Jason Kroom, more opportunity. Could Kyle Rudolph be gone this offseason? He's not. He had that Hail Mary in that big game, but whatever. Tyler Conklin, who I think has more upside than his last year before he came out. He was hurt 2 years ago. He's a receiving tight end. David Morgan, who's developing into a good two-way tight end. Look, the potential opportunity there at tight end for the Vikings, who are still going to run the ball, run with Kevin Stefanski. But watching that, Mo Alley Cox, and this is where I want to mention Eric Swope. I don't have him anywhere. I should have. I think
I don't either. I don't
know if he's not on a roster right now, maybe, or is he on the Saints roster?
They brought him. I thought they brought him back.
I don't know,
because they kicked him off. Then the Saints had him, and then they brought him back.
Yeah, my head was spinning with all of the Eric Swope transactions. So let's mention Mo Alley Cox instead. Another basketball background, biggest hands in the NFL. Jack Doyle, Eric Ebron are there, but if they get hurt, Doyle got hurt last year. Ebron gets banged up. We could be talking about Mo Alley Cox, Robert Tonyan, Green Bay. Jimmy Graham's probably going to stick around, but Tonyan, I know Matt Waldman has written him up. Demetrius Harris, another basketball tight end. He's going to be a free agent. We'll see. Jeremy Sprinkle, Arizona Razorbacks for Clayton Gray. And
Arkansas Razorbacks even.
God, my brain is sputtering as we're not going to make it to the end. Smoke is coming out of the hood, Cecil.
Don't get the bends when we go back up because we're in a submarine. By the way, that's one of my favorite songs, by the way.
The bends?
Baby Got the Bends.
That's a great
Yep. Yes, it is. Fantastic.
We are gonna have album of the week. I got to hold the gaskets together.
So okay. Get to album of the week. Get there. By the way, Anthrax redid the Bends with John Bush as their lead singer because John Bush is awesome. That's submarine tight ends. It is very cool. It's true to the original too. So anyway, submarine tight ends and guys that used to be wide receivers. Moritz Boehringer is with the Bengals. And I'm like, okay, we know Tyler Eifert's not going to stick around and whatever Tyler Croft, like Moritz Boehringer's there with the bank. Maybe he can be the defensive coordinator. Anyway, Bucky Hodges is with the Steelers. Now, I love the guy. Loved him in college. And I'm like, why the hell is he bouncing around? I know maybe not the most motivated of individuals. But, I mean, if Lazy Leggett's kicking it, like, why not Bucky Hodges? And Durham Smythe. Everyone will talk about Gesicki. Smythe might be the guy that has the longer career. Don't know what that means for your fantasy league, Bloom. But everyone, Gesicki, woo! Yes, cool. Smythe might be the long-term guy.
So, hit on Hodges, yes. Boehringer, yes. And the Unicorns, I can't remember what the name of the team was, like Schweissbein or something like that. That he played hey, you got AAF, I've got German semi-pro football. Okay,
nice.
Logan Thomas, I think you mentioned earlier. Rico Gathers, I'm not letting go of Rico Gathers yet. They bulked him up to become an offensive tackle, but that dude, another former basketball player, he can play. He can box out and play at the tight end position and be a weapon. Dion Yelder, who the Saints were really excited about. He didn't make the team as an undrafted free agent. They threw like 50,000 or something at him. One of those big undrafted free agent bonuses. And the Chiefs signed him. And the day the Saints let him go and then promoted him to the active roster 3 weeks later. And if Demetrius Harris is gone, mentioned earlier, now you have him as the number 2 tight end, chance to have a role in that great offense. And I'll mention Tyrone Swoops, former Texas option quarterback. Seattle, not a great place for fantasy prospects to grow for receivers. But yes, we made it. And it's fun, Cease, because what it should remind everybody is, again, players are developing. Players are working to refine their nutrition or workouts, change their bodies. Players are working with position coaches. Players are working with other players in addition to OTAs. And so these guys will show up next year at training camp, different in some cases, players than they were when we last saw them. And that's when we start to hear the offseason buzz, the drip, drip, drip. And this is a great place to start and reacquaint ourselves with the players that still might have a chance.
And as I jotted them down in my handy Reese's Senior Bowl notebook, just to let everyone know, those shows will also come out as well. I'm leaving for the Combine on Tuesday. So, Bloom, either we do them before I leave or when I'm in Indianapolis for the Scouting Combine. But it is that time.
Yeah.
And Audible's tradition here on YouTube. I like doing the shows on YouTube, brother.
Yeah, me too.
Other than shaking my damn camera all the time, I appreciate the audience, appreciate the chat room reacting to me and you and us here on this show. But everyone wondering, what is Sigmund Bloom's album of the week?
Yeah, the album of the week. Thank you. The new Audible tradition. And it is good. And the intimacy with our audience. Thank you, everybody who comes out live. Thank you, everybody who listens. And this is fun. And
we're letting you into our homes.
Yeah, right. And encourage us. I used to say don't encourage us, but encourage us, because I think that we're seeing now social media and the ability to go live with zero overhead at basically the drop of a hat. It's encouraging us more to spend more time with each other. We like spending time with each other. Cecil, I love spending time with you.
I was in a bad mood until I got you on the horn, brother. I'll be honest.
Well, I'll say this then as a transition. There are segues, then there are segues. The album of the week is Happy Sad by Kiefer. Hey, there you go.
Okay.
Happy Sad. This is it's a departure because it's not an album that I found for 99 cents at one of the record stores, many amazing record stores, Euclid Records at top. Nolamix was excellent. They had a great in-store. See, they did a tribute to Nas last weekend, and they had an in-store from the MC. He was from Elzai. He was from Detroit. Did an in-store at Nolamix Records in my neighborhood. It's from the great Stones Throw Records, and it was just Dilla Day. I mentioned that. Stones Throw Records, it's one of those Peanut Butter Wolf, one of those small labels that if they release something, it makes you say, what is this? Kind of like Brain Feeder and Flying Lotus. So this is a lot of keyboard, mood, very ambient, the kind of music I like to listen to when I'm working. See, I know you have music you like to listen to whenever you're writing. What's one of your go-to writing albums?
Go-to writing album for me is Dirty Deeds, actually.
Nice.
By AC/DC.
Yeah.
Or something like Stomp 442 by Anthrax. Yeah. Like I gotta keep going, right? It's that energy, it's that rhythm, it's that charge, right?
Right. Where I'm trying to make my mind like placid, like the surface of a pond, so it reflects all of my thoughts clearly. And certainly this album, Kiefer, and anything Stones Throw Records, I'm one of the things I'll miss. I talk a lot about New Orleans. One of the things I'll miss about Austin is South by Southwest and the annual Stones Throw showcase that would be there. Mind Sign was often there. Just got to see some great stuff there every year. But on the other side, I get Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest. Although Rex, as I was telling you before we went on the air, the King Rex tribute house burnt down here on St. Charles, massive fire. So hopefully that's not a bad sign.
Yeah, hopefully everyone's okay down there in New Orleans. Look at this, Bloom. We talked about panning for gold. You talked about panning for record gold, vinyl gold. So
and
here
Anthrax
we go
too, twice.
Yes, of course. Always got to be.
Everybody our age can remember the first time you heard Anthrax.
Probably I'm the Man or Bring the Noise.
I'm the Man. Yeah.
I'm the Man. Okay, good. Look at Bloom. Look at that guy. See, your sister Lori was a good metalhead.
Yes.
A very good metalhead. By the way, watch The Dirt. Motley Crue's movie's coming out on Netflix on the 22nd of March.
Saw that.
Debauchery. Anyway, rocking in Atlanta at Tattletales. Some people might have done that recently because of the Super Bowl. Anyway, that's a wrap. I've said too much. That's a wrap. He's Sigmund Bloom. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible. Thanks, guys. Stay tuned and stay frosty.